My name is Ren Kaido, and on the day everyone in my class awakened their legendary talents, I received a skill so useless that the examiner actually checked the crystal twice. One guy awakened Dragon Blood Berserker. Another girl got Saint of Moonlight. My childhood rival Cassian Vale got Thunderblade Prince, because apparently the universe had been snorting premium-grade favoritism since breakfast. Then my turn came. I put my hand on the crystal. The whole room went silent, and one sad gray window appeared in front of me. Last breath learner. Effect unknown. That was it. No dragon, no glowing wings, not even a little spark. The examiner looked at me like I had just awakened the ability to file taxes slightly faster. Cassian laughed so hard he almost fell off the stage. He told me I could carry his bags when he became an S-rank hunter. I told him I would think about it after I finished carrying his ego to the nearest landfill. 3 days later, I was hired as a dungeon porter, so technically, he won that round. My job was simple: follow a low-rank party into a goblin mine, carry monster cores, and stay away from anything with teeth. I was doing a fantastic job until the party leader stepped on a rune that dropped half the tunnel into an underground nest. Everyone escaped except me, because the emergency rope snapped at the exact moment I grabbed it. I fell through 3 rotten platforms, bounced off a goblin cooking pot, and landed face first in something that smelled like a dead sock had married a swamp. Then 20 goblins came out of the dark. I had 12 HP. I grabbed a rusty sword from a corpse and started swinging. My swordsmanship skill was level 1. Which basically meant I knew which end was rude. I cut one goblin, missed another, got stabbed in the shoulder, kicked in the ribs, and poisoned by a tiny dart. My HP dropped to 7, then 4, then 2. The goblin chief raised a cleaver over my head. I rolled. My HP hit 1, and the world changed. A golden message exploded across my vision. Condition satisfied. Skill used at exactly 1 HP. Swordsmanship has entered permanent accelerated growth. All future swordsmanship EXP multiplied by 10. I stared at the message for half a second. The goblin chief stared at me. Then he tried to turn my skull into soup. I moved without thinking, slashed his wrist, ducked under the cleaver, and stabbed him through the throat. My swordsmanship jumped from level 1 to level 4 from 1 kill. I killed another goblin. Level 6. Another. Level 8. Every swing became cleaner. Every step became sharper. By the 10th goblin, I was moving like I had trained for years. By the 20th, I was standing in a pile of bodies with a rusty sword in one hand and 1 HP blinking in front of my face like the world's most aggressive notification. That was when I understood my awakening. Any ability I used while sitting at 1 HP gained 10 times normal EXP forever. Not temporarily. Forever. I should have been terrified. Instead, my first thought was, oh, this is disgusting. My second thought was, I am about to become the most medically irresponsible man alive. And yes, I know how that sounds. My survival strategy had officially become getting my health bar so low that a mosquito could collect my inheritance. Absolute clown behavior. If my mother had seen me, she would have beaten the remaining 1 HP out of me herself. I found a weak healing herb in the goblin nest and chewed exactly enough to reach 5 HP. Then I tested the skill again. I jumped over a broken crate until a movement skill appeared. Basic footwork, level 1. I let a cave rat bite me until I returned to 1 HP. Then sprinted from the rat swarm. Golden message. Basic footwork entered permanent accelerated growth. I nearly kissed the rats. Instead, one bit my ankle, so I punted him into a wall and apologized to his family. By the time the rescue team found me, I had permanently boosted swordsmanship, basic footwork, pain resistance, poison resistance, and regeneration. The last one happened because my body had naturally healed a single point while I was at 1 HP. The system counted regeneration as a skill activation and slapped the 10 times modifier on it. That one changed everything. At first, regeneration was pathetic. 1 HP every 10 minutes. But 10 times growth meant every time it restored health, it leveled faster. Within a week, it was healing 1 HP every minute. Then every 30 seconds. Then every 10. So I did what any sensible person would do with rapidly evolving regeneration. I rented an abandoned warehouse, bought a barrel of low-grade acid slime, 3 shock traps, a sack of healing herbs, and a butcher's meat thermometer, for reasons I refuse to explain. My training schedule became completely deranged. I would let the acid slime chew through my HP, stop at 1, and practice sword swings until regeneration pushed me to 2. Then I would step on a shock plate, return to 1, and continue. Footwork, swordsmanship, throwing, breathing control, mana circulation. I even unlocked improvised weapon mastery after fighting the slime with a chair. Then I discovered that skills did not have to be combat skills. At 1 HP, I cooked dinner. Cooking entered permanent accelerated growth. At 1 HP, I cleaned the warehouse. Cleaning entered permanent accelerated growth. At 1 HP, I repaired my torn coat. Sewing entered permanent accelerated growth. I stared at my status screen in silence. Then I deliberately poisoned myself with a goblin pepper, dropped to 1 HP, and tried flirting with the woman who sold me herbs. Charisma did not unlock. She did throw a cabbage at my face though. Apparently even divine cheats have limits. 2 weeks later, the Hunter Association held a public qualification exam. Cassian was there in silver armor surrounded by reporters, smiling like his cheekbones had their own sponsorship deal. I arrived wearing second-hand boots and carrying the same rusty sword from the goblin mine. The first test was a speed course. The instructor warned us that the record was 48 seconds. Cassian finished in 31. Everyone screamed. I quietly stepped behind a pillar, stabbed my own boot onto a concealed damage rune I had bought legally from a training shop, and lowered myself to 1 HP. Then I ran. Basic footwork had reached level 47 from my warehouse routine. Halfway through the course, it evolved into Gale Step. Gale Step immediately inherited the 10 times growth modifier. I crossed the final platform in 9 seconds. Nobody screamed. They just stared. The instructor looked at the timer, looked at me, looked back at the timer, then slapped it like the machine owed him money. The second test measured striking force. Cassian scored 12,000 points with a thunder-coated sword strike. I went next. My swordsmanship was now level 53. I activated muscle control, mana edge, breath compression, and swordsmanship at 1 HP, because if I was going to exploit a loophole, I was going to disrespect it professionally. I hit the target. The machine showed 32,000. Then it exploded. A chunk of the measuring device flew across the hall and landed in the examiner's soup. I wanted to apologize, but he was staring at the floating piece of metal in his lunch like it had just revealed his wife's secret second family. That was my first high-rank qualification. That was also the day Cassian stopped laughing. He challenged me to a duel immediately. Of course he did. His pride had just been drop-kicked in public, live in front of 12 recording crystals. He demanded we settle things in the association arena. I accepted, mostly because my dual sense skill was still level 1, and I wanted to fix that. The referee made us start at full health. That was annoying. Cassian opened with Thunderfang, a blue arc that tore chunks out of the stone floor. I dodged the first 2. The third clipped my side. The fourth hit my chest. Everyone thought I was getting overwhelmed. I was counting. 30 HP, 17, 9, 4. Cassian raised his sword and charged his strongest strike. I stopped dodging. His blade hit my shoulder. 1 HP. The golden window appeared. Dual Sense entered permanent accelerated growth. Mana Edge entered permanent accelerated growth. Muscle Control entered permanent accelerated growth. Pain Resistance entered permanent accelerated growth. I smiled. Cassian froze. That poor idiot finally realized something was wrong when the half-dead porter he had mocked began grinning like a raccoon that had found cocaine behind a wizard's tavern. He attacked again. Dual Sense predicted the angle before he moved. Gale Step pushed me past him. Swordsmanship corrected my grip during the swing. Mana Edge sharpened itself as it cut through his lightning. One exchange gave me more growth than some trainees gained in a month. I tapped the flat of my rusty sword against Cassian's neck. The duel ended. He stood there trembling, not from fear, but from rage. I leaned close and whispered, "Thanks, I needed the EXP." His face became a whole new shade of purple. I had no idea that one sentence would start a personal vendetta lasting several disasters, one dragon divorce, and an incident involving a cathedral bell that legally cannot be discussed in 3 kingdoms. But first, I had to survive my new career. My qualification attracted the attention of Black Harbor Guild, a mid-tier guild famous for accepting missions other people considered suicidal. Their guild master Mara Voss was a one-eyed woman who carried a spear taller than I was, and drank tea like it had personally offended her. She looked at my exam footage once and said, "You fight better when injured." I said, "That is an oversimplification." She said, "You deliberately ate 3 lightning attacks." I said, "That is a slightly more accurate simplification." She hired me immediately. My first guild raid was against a bone ogre living under the city aqueduct. It was supposed to be B rank. The report was wrong. The ogre had eaten a cursed knight and evolved into a grave maw tyrant, an A-rank monster with 6 arms, armor made from fused skeletons, and a mouth in its stomach. When it roared, half the team froze from fear. I did not. Mostly because I was too busy wondering why the stomach mouth had human teeth. That thing had better dental coverage than I did. I had spent 16 years brushing twice a day just for some sewer ogre to show up with a perfect set of pearly whites. That was some disrespectful bullshit. The tyrant smashed our tank through a wall. Mara blocked 2 arms with her spear, but the other 4 kept attacking. I rushed in, cut 1 tendon, and got backhanded into a pillar. My HP dropped to 23. Good. The tyrant charged. I used Gale Step. 13 HP. It slammed its fist down. I crossed my sword to block. 6 HP. The stomach mouth fired a beam of black mana. I twisted sideways, but not enough. 1 HP. Everything lit up. Gale Step gained accelerated growth. Mana Reinforcement gained accelerated growth. Threat Perception gained accelerated growth. Bone Resistance, a skill I did not know existed, awakened and gained accelerated growth at the same time. Then regeneration activated. I healed to 2. I was actually annoyed. That was the first major problem with my build. My own regeneration was becoming too strong. Every time I reached 1 HP, it dragged me away from the condition almost instantly. The ability that made training safer was now ruining my training efficiency. So naturally, while fighting an A-rank monster, I opened my status window and turned regeneration off. Mara saw me do it. She shouted, "Did you just disable your healing?" I shouted back. It was getting in the way. She screamed something that sounded like a prayer and a death threat having a custody battle. I stayed at 1 HP. Then I went to work. Every dodge fed Gale Step. Every block fed swordsmanship and mana reinforcement. Every near miss fed threat perception. The Grave Maw Tyrant had 6 arms, which meant 6 times as many attacks, which meant 6 times as many chances to practice. To me, the monster was not a boss anymore. It was a gym membership with anger issues. 5 minutes later, Gale Step evolved into Phantom Rush. Swordsmanship evolved into Blade Flow. Threat perception evolved into Killing Intent Radar. I started slipping between the tyrant's arms so fast that its 6 hands began punching each other. Then the stomach mouth opened again. I shoved my rusty sword inside it. The tyrant fired its black beam. The sword shattered, but Mana Edge survived as a blade around my bare hand. I drove that blade straight through the monster's core. The tyrant collapsed. The guild cheered. I stared at the pieces of my sword. That rusty piece of garbage had been with me since the Goblin Mine. I had killed monsters, broken records, and humiliated Cassian with it. I felt genuinely sad. Then a notification appeared. Improvised weapon mastery has evolved. New skill. Anything is a sword. I looked at a broken femur from the ogre's armor. The system highlighted it. Compatible weapon. I picked up the bone. Mara watched me swing it once and said, "No." I said, "You do not even know what I am going to do." She said, "I know enough." She did not. Nobody did. The Bone Ogre incident promoted me to B rank almost immediately, which should have meant better missions, better equipment, and enough money to stop eating noodles that came with seasoning labeled only as brown. Instead, it earned me an invitation to the Royal Combat Institute. The institute was where nobles, elite hunters, military heirs, and rich psychopaths learned to become national weapons. Tuition cost more than my entire neighborhood. Luckily, Black Harbor Guild had a sponsorship slot, and Mara decided I needed formal education before I accidentally invented a combat technique that violated agriculture law. I arrived at the institute carrying the ogre femur. Anything is a sword had confirmed it was technically a sword. The gate guard disagreed. We argued for 11 minutes. I won after demonstrating a thrust. He let me through because he no longer wanted to be part of the conversation. My class instructor was Professor Darius Flint, a retired S-rank hunter with a metal arm and the permanent expression of a man who had once tried to teach teenagers and never recovered spiritually. On the first day, he told us the institute had one rule above all others. Do not deliberately endanger yourself for training. 30 people turned to look at me. Apparently, my reputation had arrived first. I raised my hand and asked, "How deliberate is deliberately?" He closed his eyes. He had the expression of a priest who had just watched someone take a dump in the holy water and ask if it counted as baptism. I was pretty sure my enrollment had already aged his organs. I had been there 40 seconds. The institute used a skill prism that could scan our growth rates. Normal talent was measured between 1 and 5 stars. Cassian, who had also enrolled, had 5-star sword growth and 4-star lightning growth. The class went wild. Then I touched the prism. It cracked. Professor Flint replaced it. The second one cracked. He brought out an old military-grade prism from a locked cabinet. That one displayed 10 stars for swordsmanship, then 20, then 99, then a tiny error symbol that looked embarrassed. I tried explaining that it was only because of my awakening trait. Professor Flint asked what the activation condition was. I told him. He stared at me for a long time. Then he took my student health insurance card out of my registration packet and quietly tore it in half. Academy life became a feeding frenzy of new skills. Every class was another opportunity. Archery, unlock it. Reach 1 HP. Fire 1 arrow. Permanent boost. Barrier magic, same thing. Detection magic, same thing. Potion brewing, I brewed a healing tonic while almost dead, and alchemy got the modifier. Then things got stupid. During survival class, we had to build a shelter. I lowered myself to 1 HP and tied a knot. Construction unlocked. During economics, the professor made us negotiate the price of monster hides. I arrived at 1 HP and haggled over a fake wolf pelt. Bargaining unlocked. During etiquette class, I bowed at 1 HP. Court manners unlocked. I did not even want court manners, but 10 times court manners sounded hilarious. By the end of the month, I could enter a banquet, identify every poison in the room, negotiate the host down on the price of his own furniture, repair a torn curtain, cook the appetizers, and then kill everyone with a spoon if necessary. That is not a skill build. That is a divorced dad having a midlife crisis inside a role-playing game. My status screen looked like somebody gave a caffeinated goblin access to character creation and told him to ruin the economy. There was one problem. Getting to 1 HP was becoming nearly impossible. My body had grown too durable. Pain resistance had evolved into iron nerves. Poison resistance became venom eater. My natural defense had climbed from repeated punishment. Regeneration, even when disabled, had developed a passive emergency subskill called Refuse to Die that triggered whenever I dropped below 5 HP. I could disable regeneration. I could not disable Refuse to Die. The system had apparently decided I needed adult supervision, so I found a loophole. Cursed equipment. The Institute Vault contained training artifacts that reduced maximum HP instead of dealing damage. One was a black ring called Widow's Promise. It cut maximum HP by 50%. Another was an iron necklace called Martyr's Chain that cut it by another 75% but boosted mana. Students were forbidden from wearing both because the combined curse could kill an ordinary person. I borrowed them. By borrowed, I mean Professor Flint gave them to me after I explained my problem, and he muttered, "At this point, I want to see where the madness ends." With both artifacts equipped, my maximum HP fell from 800 to 100. At that point, I looked less like a warrior and more like I had robbed a goth sex dungeon during a clearance sale. The cursed jewelry was ugly as hell, but optimization has never cared about dignity. Still too high, so I added a third cursed item from Black Harbor, Boots of the Coward King, which reduced max HP whenever I moved toward an enemy. I walked toward a practice dummy. My max HP fell to 12. I took another step. 6. Another. 3. Another. 1. My eyes widened. My current HP was 1. My maximum HP was also 1. That meant I could not regenerate above the activation threshold. For the first time, I had discovered a way to remain permanently at 1 HP without constantly taking damage. The system began vomiting golden notifications. Walking gained accelerated growth. Breathing control gained accelerated growth. Mana circulation gained accelerated growth. Balance gained accelerated growth. Listening gained accelerated growth. Observation gained accelerated growth. I blinked. Observation gained EXP. I swallowed. Breathing control gained EXP. I took a bite of an apple. Eating efficiency awakened. Accelerated growth applied. I nearly dropped the apple. The effect was broader than I thought. Once I stayed at 1 HP long enough, the system began recognizing almost any repeated action as a trainable ability. I spent one afternoon wearing 3 cursed artifacts and doing ordinary chores. By dinner, I had accelerated laundry, inventory management, knife handling, memory, mental arithmetic, heat resistance, cold resistance, smell identification, fast reading, and something called chair stability, because I had apparently sat down with enough commitment to impress the gods. That night, my roommate found me standing on one leg, balancing 6 books on my head while stirring soup and reading a spell manual. He stared at me. I stared back. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "My multitasking skill is almost level 20. He packed his belongings and requested another room. Coward. Things would have stayed funny if the Institute had not been attacked the next morning. The sky split open during combat practice. A black tower dropped out of a dimensional crack and buried itself in the center courtyard. Monsters poured from its doors. Gargoyles, armored wraiths, red-eyed beasts made of smoke. Above the tower appeared a system announcement visible to the entire capital. Emergency dungeon manifestation. Tower of 9 funerals. Clear condition, reach the 9th floor within 6 hours. Failure condition, citywide soul harvest. Everyone stopped laughing. The Institute formed raid teams instantly. Professors took the lead. Senior students protected the lower ranks. Cassian, glowing with lightning, stood beside me and said, "Do not think I need your help." I looked at the enormous tower currently preparing to drink 500,000 souls. I said, "Brother, your insecurity has incredible timing." We entered together. The first floor was a corridor of blades. Walls launched spinning discs every second. Most teams advanced behind shields. I equipped my cursed gear. Maximum HP, 1. Then I ran directly into the trap. Professor Flint screamed my name. Phantom Rush activated. Blade Awareness activated. Body Control activated. All 3 skills started drinking 10 times EXP like frat boys, discovering the punch was secretly enchanted. I moved through the blades, each near miss sharpening my senses. Halfway down the corridor, Phantom Rush evolved into Mirage Drive. I accelerated so violently that the trap mechanisms could not rotate fast enough to target me. I reached the end, turned around and realized everyone else was still at the entrance. Cassian looked furious. Professor Flint looked 50 years older. I waved. A blade sliced the air 1 centimeter above my head. I heard Mara's voice in my imagination telling me I had the survival instincts of a drunk squirrel wearing roller skates. Fair assessment. The second floor was a poison swamp. Venom Eater turned it into a buffet. The third floor reversed gravity every 7 seconds. I deliberately refused the anti-gravity ropes and learned gravity balance by being thrown between the floor and ceiling like laundry in a demonic washing machine. The fourth floor contained 100 shadow assassins. Killing intent radar evolved twice. The fifth floor was worse. No monsters, no traps, just a banquet hall. A sign read, "Defeat the host according to noble etiquette." Everyone looked at me. For the first time in my life, court manners mattered. A ghost duke appeared and challenged us to dinner. If we used the wrong spoon, we lost HP. If we interrupted him, we lost HP. If we failed to compliment the wine, the table tried to eat us. Cassian picked up the salad fork incorrectly and got slapped across the room by a chair. I sat down with 1 maximum HP and activated 10 times court manners. 5 minutes later, I knew 17 ancient forms of royal greeting. 10 minutes later, I could insult a nobleman's bloodline while technically complimenting his curtains. 15 minutes later, I convinced the ghost duke that serving red wine with spectral eel violated an extinct empire's funeral protocol. He apologized to me. Then I negotiated ownership of the floor. Bargaining leveled 11 times. The ghost duke signed the deed. The dungeon announced that I had cleared the challenge through hostile acquisition. I had just bought a haunted dining room during an apocalypse. Cassian asked why. I said, passive income. He looked like he wanted the tower to win. On the 6th floor, the dungeon separated us. I landed alone in a circular arena with no exits. Across from me stood a woman in black armor holding a white spear. Her face was hidden behind a horned mask. Her status was unreadable except for one title, Executor of Zero. She attacked before I could speak. Her spear crossed 20 meters instantly and pierced my shoulder. The cursed gear kept my maximum HP at 1. But the strike did something stranger. My status window flickered. Maximum HP reduced by 1. For half a second, my maximum HP became 0. The world went black. Then refused to die activated. Emergency contradiction detected. Minimum survivable HP fixed at 1. My maximum HP snapped back to 1. The masked woman stepped away. You resisted death tax, she said. I checked my skill list. Curse resistance awakened. Accelerated growth applied. I laughed. She did not. She stabbed me again. Death tax reduced my maximum HP. Refused to die restored it. Curse resistance gained a mountain of EXP from surviving the contradiction. She stabbed me again, and again, and again. I stopped fighting back. The woman finally shouted, "Why are you smiling?" I said, "Because every time you stab me, I get better at not being stabbed by metaphysics." She actually paused. That was when I knew I had psychologically damaged her. Imagine training your entire life to become an elite death priestess, only to meet some idiot treating your forbidden execution curse like a loyalty rewards program. 10 stabs and the 11th death is free. That is not combat. That is necromantic Costco. And I was about to abuse the membership until management called security. Curse resistance evolved into fate resistance. Her next death tax failed completely. I grabbed the spear shaft, activated anything as a sword, and the system recognized her weapon as mine for 0.2 seconds because I was touching it. That was enough. Weapon hijack awakened. Accelerated growth applied. I twisted. The spear flew from her hands. The woman jumped back, stunned. I pointed her own weapon at her. Your turn, I said. She did something unexpected. She knelt. Then she called me the expected error. I asked what that meant. She removed her mask. She was young, maybe 20, with silver eyes and a black symbol carved into her forehead. My name is Lyra, she said. I belong to the Church of Zero. We have waited 300 years for someone who can survive the forbidden value. I stared at her. You people worship the number 0? We worship the end beneath all things. That sounds exhausting. She ignored me and explained that the Tower of 9 Funerals had not appeared by accident. The church had summoned it to find me. My awakening was connected to something called the root system, the hidden layer beneath every status window in the world. According to their prophecy, one person would eventually reach the boundary between life and death without crossing it. That person would either break the system or become its new administrator. I had one question. Does administrator come with dental? Lyra stared at me. I was still upset about the ogre. Before she could answer, the floor shattered. Something enormous climbed up from below. The thing that climbed through the broken floor had 9 heads, 12 arms, and a crown made from screaming faces. I know those numbers do not match any reasonable anatomy. The monster did not care. Its status identified it as the 7th funeral, which was confusing because we were on the 6th floor, but I had already learned not to expect clean bookkeeping from evil architecture. Lyra grabbed her spear back. I let her, mostly because the monster's middle head had begun inhaling the entire room. The air pulled toward its mouth. Stone tiles ripped free, columns bent. I planted my feet, but my 1-point maximum HP build came with almost no tolerance for a direct hit. If even one attack bypassed fate resistance or refused to die, I was cooked. Then the suction dragged me forward. I activated Mirage Drive against the pull. Movement EXP flooded in. I slid backward anyway. More EXP. I ran harder. More EXP. The monster had accidentally created a treadmill powered by death. I looked at Lyra. She knew that expression already. No, she said. Yes, this is not training equipment. It is now. For the next 30 seconds, I sprinted in place against a monster trying to inhale my soul. Mirage Drive leveled so quickly my legs started leaving silver after images. Then the skill evolved. Void Step. The suction caught me. I vanished. For a fraction of a second, I stepped through empty space and reappeared behind the monster. I had unlocked short-range teleportation because a demon tried to vacuum me like a dropped noodle. There are heroes who receive ancient swords from kings. There are saints chosen by divine beasts. I became a space-warping swordsman because I was too stubborn to get slurped by Satan's industrial shop vac. Destiny has no dignity. I drove Lyra's spear through the monster's spine using anything as a sword. One head spun around and breathed green fire at me. Fire resistance awakened. Another head screamed directly into my face. Sound resistance awakened. A third head tried to hypnotize me. Mental defense awakened. The monster kept giving me skills. I almost felt guilty. Almost. Lyra finally understood what I was doing. She stopped trying to protect me and began deliberately steering attacks in my direction. Professor Flint would have killed both of us. Together, we dismantled the 7th funeral. I teleported between its heads while Lyra pinned its arms. Every time it used a new effect, I survived once and let the accelerated growth take over. By the end, fire resistance had become Flame Devourer, sound resistance had become Silent Mind, and mental defense had grown into Unshakable Ego. That last name felt unnecessarily personal. When the monster died, the tower skipped us directly to the 7th floor. Cassian and the others arrived moments later through a separate gate. He saw Lyra standing beside me and immediately pointed his sword at her. She is with the cult, Lyra said, formerly. I looked at her. She looked at me. Formerly? I asked. She shrugged. Their messiah made a joke about dental benefits. The mystery is gone. Fair. The 7th floor contained an ocean suspended vertically in the air. The exit was at the top, 300 meters above us. Flying magic failed inside the room, so we had to swim upward through a wall of water, while gravity tried to pull us sideways. Everyone else used enchanted breathing charms. I did not. Professor Flint grabbed my collar. You are not drowning yourself for a skill. I already have 1 HP. That sentence does not improve the situation. It improves several skills. He physically tied a breathing charm around my neck. I secretly loosened it halfway up. Underwater movement awakened. Breath holding awakened. Pressure resistance awakened. Professor Flint noticed and kicked me so hard the charm went back into my mouth. By the time we reached the 8th floor, everyone was exhausted except me and Lyra. Cassian had stopped complaining. That was how I knew things were serious. The 8th floor was a mirror maze. Each mirror created a copy of whoever looked into it, including their skills. My reflection stepped out with 1 HP. I froze. The copy smiled. That was horrifying. Not because it was strong, because I suddenly understood what everyone else had been dealing with. The copy immediately punched itself into a mirror shard to activate a new skill. I said, oh no. Cassian shouted, now you understand. My duplicate activated Void Step, Blade Flow, Fate Resistance, and anything is a sword. It picked up a piece of broken mirror and used it like a saber. Then a second mirror copied the copy. Then a third. Within 10 seconds there were 8 versions of me, all at 1 HP, all gaining 10 times EXP from fighting. This was not a boss fight. This was an infestation. The copies attacked everyone. I could not overpower them because they learned as fast as I did. So I needed a skill they did not have. I looked around the maze. Every reflection mimicked my actions, not my thoughts. I closed my eyes. Then I activated Killing Intent Radar and fought without sight. The copies hesitated. Blind combat awakened. Accelerated growth applied. Because my eyes were closed when the skill awakened, the mirrors had nothing to copy until they reacted. That tiny delay gave me the advantage. I cut through one reflection, then another. Blind combat leveled every second. Soon I was predicting the copies from foot pressure, breathing, and killing intent alone. The final duplicate rushed me from behind. I bent forward. It flew over my shoulder and crashed face first into a mirror. I will admit that watching a copy of myself eat glass was emotionally complicated. It was like seeing my search history gain physical form and immediately get hit by a bus. Disturbing, deserved, and somehow still embarrassing. When the last copy shattered, the maze collapsed. The 9th floor opened. At the top of the tower sat a man in white robes. Not a monster, not a demon, a man. His name was Cardinal Severin, leader of the Church of Zero. Behind him floated a black sphere the size of a house. Thousands of glowing threads connected the sphere to the city below. Those were souls. The tower had already begun the harvest. Severin smiled at Lyra. You found him. Lyra raised her spear. I changed my mind. Because of his power? No, because you are unbearably dramatic. I liked her immediately. Severin explained that Last Breath Learner was not an ordinary awakening. It was a fragment of an administrator authority called Crisis Evolution. The original purpose was simple. When humanity faced extinction, the system could accelerate adaptation in survivors closest to death. My version was broken. Instead of granting temporary growth during a global disaster, it permanently marked individual skills used at 1 HP. Severin wanted to extract it. He believed he could spread the effect to the entire church and build an army that evolved infinitely through controlled near-death battles. I said, so your grand plan is my warehouse routine, but with matching robes? His eye twitched. Villains hate summaries, especially when 3 centuries of prophecy gets reduced to matching robes warehouse bullshit. You could practically hear his inner edgelord filing for emotional damages. He raised one hand. The black sphere pulsed. My cursed equipment shattered. Maximum HP restored. 1942. I blinked. Severin smiled. You cannot use your condition now. That was smart. Annoyingly smart. He had figured out my weakness. With my defenses and regeneration, getting from full health to 1 HP in the middle of battle would take too long. Then he made his second mistake. He attacked me. Black chains burst from the floor. I let the first hit land. My HP dropped to 1,603. He attacked again. 1,210. Again. 800. Professor Flint shouted at me to dodge. I stood still. Severin's smile faded. 500. 200. 46. Regeneration tried to activate. I disabled it. Refused to die tried to activate. I used fate resistance on my own passive skill. For the first time, I resisted my own emergency healing. Severin's next chain pierced my chest. 1 HP. Golden windows covered my vision. Fate resistance entered a new growth stage. Self-suppression awakened. Accelerated growth applied. Chain resistance awakened. Accelerated growth applied. Then Severin stopped attacking. He finally understood. I pointed at him. You should not have helped me get here. He looked genuinely offended, as if I had cheated during his attempt to steal my soul. I used Void Step. One moment I stood across the chamber. The next I was in front of him. He raised a barrier. Anything as a sword activated on my own hand. Blade flow wrapped mana around my fingers. I chopped through the barrier. Not metaphorically. I karate chopped an A-rank divine barrier in half because the system had decided my hand qualified as a sword. Severin stepped backward and whispered. Impossible, I said. You summoned a death tower over a capital city. We passed impossible around floor 3. He opened the black sphere. Every soul thread tightened. People across the city collapsed. My friends fell to their knees. Even Professor Flint could barely stand. Severin began absorbing their vitality. His level jumped. 80, 90, 100, 130. His body transformed into something made of white light and black bone. 6 wings unfolded behind him. A halo of rotating numbers appeared over his head. Then his new aura hit me. My HP stayed at 1. Perfect. I ran straight into it. Pressure resistance gained EXP. Mana reinforcement gained EXP. Pain resistance gained EXP. My skills started climbing so fast that the status messages blurred. Severin fired a beam that erased half the chamber. Void Step evolved into Horizon Skip. I teleported beyond the beam. He summoned a rain of black spears. Threat perception evolved into future threat sense. For a fraction of a second, I could see where attacks would land before they existed. He tried to crush my mind. Unshakable ego evolved into sovereign mind. He tried to erase my skill names. Fate resistance evolved into rule resistance. That was the moment Severin's expression changed from confidence to pure spiritual diarrhea. His ultimate authority was literally making me resistant to authority. He had become a divine vending machine. Except every time he pressed a button, instead of snacks falling out, I got another reason to ruin his week. If embarrassment could deal damage, this man would have been a grease stain on the cathedral floor. Severin screamed and pulled every stolen soul into himself. The black sphere collapsed. His level reached 187. Professor Flint shouted that if Severin died while containing the souls, everyone connected to him might die too. So I could not kill him. That complicated things. For approximately 3 seconds. Then I remembered bargaining. I activated Horizon Skip, appeared beside Severin, and whispered, I challenge you to a contract duel. The Church of Zero used old ritual law. Lyra had explained it during the climb. Any cardinal who accepted a formal challenge could bind a resource to the outcome. Severin laughed. And what would you wager? My awakening. Everyone stared at me. He accepted instantly. A contract window appeared. I used bargaining. At 1 HP. My 10 times boosted negotiation skill tore through the ancient contract language in seconds. I added 3 clauses while Severin was still laughing. If I lost, he received last breath learner. If he lost, he released every soul. And the duel would be decided not by death, but by surrender. Severin noticed the last clause too late. I did not need to kill him. I only needed to make him quit. What followed was less a duel and more 6 uninterrupted minutes of workplace harassment with swords. I dodged every attack using future threat sense. I cut his wings without touching his core. I used weapon hijack to steal his summoned spears out of the air. I used court manners to formally insult him between attacks, because apparently humiliating someone according to royal protocol counted as psychological pressure. Then cooking somehow gained a level when I used a fire spell to heat his metal shoulder plate. I do not know why. I refused to investigate. Finally, Severin collapsed. I placed 1 finger against his forehead. Mana edge formed a needle-thin blade. Say it. He glared at me. I pressed harder. I surrender. The contract activated. The stolen souls exploded out of his body and returned to the city. The tower began collapsing. We escaped through the roof as the entire structure dissolved into black dust. I landed in the institute courtyard with 1 HP, 17 new skills, 3 evolved abilities, 1 former cult assassin, and legal ownership of a haunted dining room on the 5th floor of a dungeon that technically no longer existed. Bargaining informed me the deed was still valid. I had no idea what to do with that information. After the Tower of 9 funerals, I became famous for all the wrong reasons. The capital newspapers called me the 1-point demon. The Hunter Association called me a strategic asset. The royal family called me for a private meeting. Professor Flint called me an administrative catastrophe. Mara just called me an idiot and handed me a new sword. It was a beautiful black blade forged from the Grave Maw Tyrant's core and the remains of my old rusty sword. The smith had named it Night Requiem. Anything as a sword immediately renamed it in my status window. Sharp object number 42. Mara laughed for 5 straight minutes. I tried changing the name back. The skill refused. Apparently my own ability had developed sarcasm. The royal meeting was worse. King Alaric wanted to know if the Church of Zero was telling the truth about my connection to the root system. I said I had no idea. Lyra confirmed that Severin had only known fragments of the prophecy. Then the king showed me something nobody outside the royal bloodline was supposed to see. Under the palace was a stone door covered in glowing system symbols. It had been sealed for 800 years. The moment I approached, it opened. Behind it was a single floating message. Unauthorized growth anomaly detected. Correction scheduled. Time remaining. 30 days. I read it twice. Correction means what? I asked. The king said, "We were hoping you knew." I looked at Lyra. She looked at Professor Flint. Professor Flint looked at the ceiling, probably asking every god he had ever heard of why retirement had not taken him sooner. Then another message appeared. Anomaly designation. Ren Kaido. Recommended correction. Deletion. I pointed at it. That seems rude. The king did not laugh. So I had 30 days before the system itself tried to delete me. That should have inspired caution. Instead, it gave me a deadline. I decided to accelerate every useful skill I could before the correction arrived. The problem was that the cursed equipment had been destroyed. Without it, reaching 1 HP took effort. Then Lyra remembered a place called the Crimson Coliseum. It was an illegal underground arena built around a relic that could set combatants to any chosen percentage of health without actually injuring them. Criminal guilds used it for death matches. The relic was called the Blood Scale. I loved it immediately. We infiltrated the Coliseum that same night. By infiltrated, I mean Lyra wore a hood and I entered the front door under my real name because there was already a betting line on whether I would survive the week. The arena owner, a giant man named Brutus Coil, recognized me and offered a deal. If I fought his champion, he would let me use the blood scale for 1 hour. His champion walked out. It was a dragon, not a dragonkin, not a drake, a full adult red dragon named Varkaz, chained under the arena with suppressor runes. I asked why an underground gambling club owned a dragon. Brutus said, "Tax reasons." I decided not to ask a second question because I enjoy sleeping at night. Owning a basement dragon for tax reasons is the kind of rich person bullshit that makes normal crime feel underfunded. Somewhere, an accountant was sweating through his shirt and pretending this was a deductible livestock expense. The blood scale set my HP to 1 before the fight. Beautiful. Varkaz opened with dragon fire. Flame Devourer absorbed it. He hit me with his tail. Body control leveled. He roared. Silent Mind leveled. He released Dragon Fear. Sovereign Mind leveled. Then he stopped attacking and stared at me. "You are enjoying this," I said, professionally. "You are diseased. That has not been medically confirmed." He attacked harder. Exactly what I wanted. 20 minutes later, my Flame Devourer evolved into Furnace Heart, allowing me to convert heat into mana. My blade flow evolved into dragon cutting principle after I spent an unreasonable amount of time testing which scales were hardest to slice. Then Varkaz's chains broke. The arena went silent. Brutus ran. Varkaz looked at the open ceiling. Then he looked at me. Everyone expected him to escape. Instead, he sat down. "I have decided," he said, "that killing you would only encourage you." That was the most emotionally mature response anyone had ever given to my combat style. I won by surrender. Again, the audience lost so much gambling money that one nobleman fainted into a bowl of soup. I am starting to suspect soup is where defeated dignity goes to die. Brutus tried to cancel our deal. I activated bargaining. He changed his mind so fast I nearly felt bad. For 1 hour, the blood scale kept me at exactly 1 HP. I did not waste a second. I practiced spell casting, throwing, climbing, stealth, map reading, lock-picking, first aid, blacksmithing, enchanting, mana sensing, tracking, beast communication, and even singing because Lyra jokingly dared me. Singing entered accelerated growth. That was a mistake. 10 minutes later, I could hit notes that made wine glasses vibrate. 20 minutes later, I unlocked resonant voice. At 40 minutes, I accidentally shattered every bottle behind the arena bar by singing one line from a tavern song. Brutus charged me for damages. I negotiated the bill down to 0. By the end of the hour, my status screen had become so long I needed a search function. The system gave me one. Menu navigation awakened. Accelerated growth applied. I stood there staring at the notification. Lyra started laughing. I had gamed the system so aggressively that I was now power leveling the ability to use the menu I was gaming. That is some snake eating its own ass nonsense. Somewhere, a cosmic software engineer was probably staring at my account with a cold coffee and considering arson. The next morning, that cosmic software engineer seemed to respond. A worldwide announcement appeared. Emergency balance event initiated. All awakened individuals are invited to the Continental Crown Tournament. Winner receives 1 authority fragment. I did not believe in coincidences anymore. An authority fragment might be exactly what I needed to survive deletion. So I entered. The Continental Crown was normally held once every 10 years. This one appeared overnight. Every major guild sent its strongest fighters. Kings sent champions. The northern clans sent giants. The Eastern Empire sent sword saints. The Desert Federation sent a woman who controlled an entire sandstorm from inside a floating chair, because apparently walking was beneath her tax bracket. Cassian entered too. He had changed since the Institute. His lightning had evolved. His pride had become slightly less radioactive, and he no longer treated me like a porter. He treated me like a natural disaster he intended to punch. Progress. The first round was a battle royale with 1,000 fighters. I entered at full HP because the tournament barriers blocked outside artifacts. The moment the match began, 97 people attacked me. Apparently there was a group bounty. I smiled. Convenient. My HP dropped rapidly. 300, 100, 30, 7, 2. Then a healer from another team panicked and restored me to full. I stared at him. He stared back. "Why would you do that?" I asked. "I thought I was helping." I chased him for 6 minutes. Not to hurt him. I wanted an apology. He kept healing me out of fear, which somehow made it worse. Eventually, Cassian struck me with a controlled lightning bolt and dropped me to 1 HP. I turned to him. He said, "You are welcome." I almost cried. Character development is beautiful. At 1 HP, I activated everything. Horizon Skip turned the arena into a joke. Future Threat Sense showed me attacks before they happened. Rule Resistance weakened binding spells. Weapon Hijack let me steal summoned weapons long enough to redirect them. Anything as a sword allowed me to use a fallen banner pole, a shield, a broken spear, and at one point another fighter's extremely expensive magical shoe as bladed weapons. The shoe worked disturbingly well. I eliminated 40 people with it. The owner kept screaming about imported leather. "Brother, if your footwear can parry a sword saint, that is not a shoe anymore. That is a foot-mounted felony. Put that bastard in evidence and call a lawyer." I reached the final 16. Then the system changed the rules. New restriction. All participants restored to maximum HP before each match. I laughed. So the system really was watching me. My next opponent was the Sand Empress, Amara Nal. She filled the arena with a cyclone before I could lower my HP enough. Every grain of sand carried mana. I could barely move. I needed the 1 HP condition quickly, so I used a new trick. Self-suppression had grown enough for me to temporarily seal my own vitality. I targeted maximum HP. The skill resisted. I pushed harder. My maximum HP dropped by half, then half again, then again. I kept compressing it until my maximum HP reached 1. The system paused. A warning appeared. Self-inflicted stat restriction detected. I expected it to block the move. Instead, Last Breath Learner activated. Self-suppression entered permanent accelerated growth. I started laughing inside the sandstorm. The system had tried to close one loophole and handed me another. Self-suppression leveled so fast that within seconds it evolved into limit authority. New effect, Temporarily impose a chosen limit on one personal attribute. I set my max HP to 1 whenever I wanted. No curses. No relic. No waiting. Just one thought. The Sand Empress saw the golden light around me and said, "What did you do?" I used Horizon Skip through the cyclone. Administrative fraud. I won in 34 seconds. The semifinals put me against Cassian. He walked into the arena smiling. No insults this time. No arrogance. He simply raised his sword and said, 1 HP? I activated Limit Authority. 1 HP. His lightning exploded across the stadium. My blade met it. For the first time, Cassian could actually keep up. He had developed a technique specifically to counter my movement, filling the air with branching lightning so there was nowhere safe to teleport. He had studied every recording of my fights. He predicted Horizon Skip. He interrupted weapon hijack. He even carried disposable weapons so I could not ruin his main blade. I was proud of him, which was annoying. We fought for 12 minutes. My skills kept growing. So did his. Then his Thunderblade Prince evolved mid-fight into Storm Sovereign. His next strike broke Night Requiem in half. My sword. Again. I looked at the broken blade. Cassian whispered, "Sorry." I looked at his sword. Anything is a sword activated. Weapon hijack activated. Cassian's eyes widened. No, I stole his sword for half a second. Yes, I hit him with his own weapon. He flew out of the arena. I won. He lay in the grass outside the barrier staring at the sky. Then he started laughing. I laughed too. For once, neither of us needed to say anything. The final match never happened. The sky turned black. Every status window in the stadium froze. A figure appeared above the arena. Human shape. No face. A body made from white symbols and empty space. Its status contained only one line. Administrator 0. The correction had arrived 23 days early. Every person in the stadium collapsed except me. Administrator 0 looked down. Anomaly Ren Kaido. It said. Permanent growth multiplier has exceeded acceptable deviation. I raised one broken sword. You invited me to a tournament. The authority fragment was bait. That is petty. You have converted emergency adaptation into recreational progression. Okay. That one was fair. You have accelerated skills outside intended combat classifications. Also fair. You have weaponized etiquette. Holy shit. Hearing a cosmic administrator formally accuse me of weaponized etiquette nearly broke my concentration. Imagine being such a system-level pain in the ass that the universe has to add used manners maliciously to your permanent record. I looked at Professor Flint. Even he nodded like the system had a point. Administrator 0 raised one hand. Correction begins. My skills vanished from the status screen one by one. Swordsmanship. Gone. Horizon Skip. Gone. Furnace Heart. Gone. Future Threat Sense. Gone. Even cooking disappeared. That one hurt personally. Within seconds, only Last Breath Learner remained. Administrator 0 spoke again. Your anomaly depends on surviving at 1 HP. Therefore, the correction is simple. Your health parameter will be rewritten. A red system window appeared. Maximum HP modification in progress. I prepared for 0. If it set my maximum HP to 0, Refuse to Die was gone. Fate Resistance was gone. Rule Resistance was gone. I had no defense left. The number changed. 1,942 became 970. Then 300. Then 50. Then 10. Then 1. I stared at the screen. Administrator 0 stared at me. For the first time since it appeared, the faceless thing seemed uncertain. My maximum HP was 1. My current HP was 1. Last Breath Learner activated. A golden message appeared. Permanent accelerated growth condition satisfied. Then another message appeared. Walking has reawakened. 10 times EXP applied. Breathing has reawakened. 10 times EXP applied. Observation has reawakened. 10 times EXP applied. Balance has reawakened. 10 times EXP applied. Heartbeat detected as repeatable biological action. New skill awakened. Heartbeat. 10 times EXP applied. I slowly looked up at Administrator 0. It had erased my entire build. Then it had accidentally made the activation condition permanent. Every second I existed, I was now at 1 HP. Every skill I relearned would immediately receive 10 times growth. Every new ability would qualify the moment it appeared. I took one step forward. Walking leveled. I inhaled. Breathing leveled. My heart beat once. Heartbeat leveled. Again. Heartbeat leveled. Again. Something inside my chest changed. Administrator 0 moved backward. That tiny movement told me everything. It was scared. I smiled. You tried to nerf me into 1 HP? Golden cracks began spreading through the frozen status window around me. My deleted skills were not returning yet. Something else was forming beneath them. A new category. Root skills. The first one appeared slowly. Existence. Level 1. 10 times EXP permanently applied. I blinked. Existence gained EXP. I was leveling up by continuing to exist. Administrator 0 raised both hands, and the entire sky filled with deletion symbols. I could hear Lyra shouting from somewhere behind me. Cassian was trying to stand. Professor Flint was screaming something about running, which was adorable because the sky itself had become a kill command. Administrator Zero had come to erase one annoying human, and somehow turned me into a 1 HP cosmic hemorrhoid, attached directly to reality. If the universe had an ass, I had apparently become the reason it could no longer sit down comfortably. I looked at the incoming wall of white light. Then I looked at my 1-point health bar, and for the first time since the Goblin Mine, I realized I might have finally found a training partner dangerous enough to keep up with me. My new heartbeat skill evolved. The system made one final sound. Administrator Zero said, "That should not be possible." I raised my empty hand as golden light wrapped around my fingers. Anything as a sword was gone, so I decided I would just learn it again. The deletion wave reached the arena, and my status screen opened a message I had never seen before. Authority challenge available. Winner receives system access. Loser is erased. I grinned. 1 HP. No build, no sword, no backup plan. Perfect conditions.